Yeah, you do need to raise that. You also need the table. Hi, guys. We're a little disorganized. I have my mic on. So, where's the whiteboard?
I'm getting there.
Why did you start recording then?
If I can.
It's episode 43, right?
Uh-huh. You mean? You have to get a new marker. You said it's in the office?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like me to shut this? You're recording.
So this is going to be a little bit of a difficult case for people, because it does involve the death of a child.
Okay.
So,
Let's do this.
and it's episode 43.
Yes. Unless I can't count.
A lipstick killer. Episode 43. I'm going to give you the whiteboard, and you can write down your opinions on whether you think this man was the killer or not. Because this is one of those cases where some people believe he's the killer, but there is not a lot of evidence pointing to the fact that this man was the killer.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Thanks for my drink.
You're welcome. Let me go ahead and get set up. For the first time, I'm not set up.
Welcome to my world when I'm not set up.
I'm sorry. I'm also a little like,
Oh, yeah, you want to tell me the good news?
what?
Your positive news.
Oh, we got approved for a house loan, so we're starting to look at houses.
Yes. We'll start off with the positive note. Then we're going to crash and burn into the nasty and negative.
Oh, yeah. So this is our third pre-recorded episode.
Jeez.
How you liking it so far?
Pre-recording?
Yeah.
I kind of like the live more because you get more interaction. But because of our circumstances and the situations, I will take what we do.
Also, for anyone wondering, I am in the middle of writing the Jack the Ripper case.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not even close to writing it all, and I am currently at about 24, 25 pages.
Yeah, so and from what I understand, she's saying it's possibly going to be like a whole month's worth of recording.
Worth of episodes, yeah. It's going to be a long amount of episodes.
That means one day we're just going to
sit down and re-record a whole bunch.
Yep.
So the lipstick killer. This is an interesting case. It's an oldie, so it's technically solved, but it's a little questionable, and we're going to get to that.
An oldie, not a goodie.
Yeah, it is gruesome, bit gruesome. There is child murder in this case. And this is a case with a lot of stupidity. Not on the criminal side, but definitely on the police side and also the press's side. There is just a lot of stupidity on the press and police's side.
Not surprised by that, by the way.
So I will say there are people who are actually questioning if these cases, two of the cases, they're like 100% certain are connected to each other. The third case, they don't think the case is connected at all. And it is just a random case that they decided to add in.
Okay.
Because it doesn't match the MO, it doesn't match anything.
Okay.
So if you have heard of the lipstick killer, you may have heard the name of William Huron. He is the one who is popularly known as the lipstick killer. There is, again, a debate if he actually was. He was 17 when he was arrested for the murders, because his criminal history was burglary,
Okay.
which is, as we've talked about, escalation. Going from burglary straight to brutal murders, that's not.
Mm,
There's things that happen in between, so it's
it's a
a
little questionable.
yeah, it's a little questionable. So there are two killings. One is two murders of two separate women, um, and then a murder of a 6-year-old girl. And they're saying that he committed those three murders,
Okay.
which is a little weird. So in the summer of 1945, Josephine Ross was a 43-year-old woman. She had been divorced twice and was living with a newly widowed mom on Chicago's east side. So for a decade, she was a stay-at-home mom and she was raising her daughters, Mary Jane and Jacqueline. And she spent all of her time and energy on everyone else. She didn't put a second for herself.
Sounds about right as a parent. You don't put time for yourself. You always put it for everybody else or your kids.
Yeah, but her daughters were adults when her third husband, Hubert Ross, had died, and so she was kind of lost. She needed something to occupy her time, so she spent most nights going to the movies. She visited psychics. It was like her favorite thing to do. Ew.
I ran into a rack. Sorry.
It was like her favorite thing to do.
Uh-huh.
Um, and she went on a lot of dates. She went to parties where she was actually just like learning how to live for herself.
Okay.
And in early June, she had gotten a tarot card reading done, and she was told her future looked promising, and she would likely be remarried by the end of the year. And at this point, the lawsuit over Hubert's life insurance claim was weighing on her. It was a medical malpractice case, and the tarot reader told her it would go in her favor. On the morning of June 5th, Mary Jane was one of her daughters, and she stood at the bathroom sink getting ready for work, listening as her mom told her what this tarot reader said and that the lawsuit would go in her favor and they would rule that Hubert hadn't falsified medical records. So she was happy. She was going to get the money that she had been looking for. And as for the psychic's prediction of marriage, Josephine's boyfriend, Oscar Nordmark, had actually already proposed. She had yet to formally accept it, and she was mulling it over.
Mm.
So Mary Jane would remember how happy her mom looked as she saw her daughters off to work. With her daughters out and nothing to do on the calendar, Josie was like, it was just a regular day. She changed into her purple robe and decided to go back to bed. Now Jacqueline came home for lunch around 1:30, and she entered expecting it to look exactly like she had seen it that morning. She was stunned when she found the apartment looked completely ransacked. Chairs and furniture all overturned, drawers pulled out of dressers. Everything that was in the drawers was thrown about. It was a complete and total mess. So Jacqueline was understandably scared, but she was thinking of her mom. So she ran into her bedroom she shared with her mom, and that's where she saw her. Josephine was laying across the bed in her daughter's red skirt wrapped around her head and a pair of silk stockings wrapped around her neck.
Oh wow.
Nearly every surface around her mother's body, the bed, the floor, the walls, the drapes, were all soaked in blood. Jacqueline knew her mom was dead, just straight off the bat. So she called the police and they arrived a short time later. And as far as the two sisters could tell, the apartment was ransacked, but only a few dollars was taken from her purse, and nothing seemed to be missing.
Huh.
So detectives ruled out robbery as the motive for the murder, and they assumed it was just a personal murder. The theory gained traction when, even though her body was covered in blood, it looked like her body had been washed at some point between the killing and when the killer left the apartment.
That's weird.
When they went to the bathroom, two detectives found that the tub was partially filled with garments and bloody water. When the skirt was removed from her head and the stockings from around her neck, police found the actual cause of death. In addition to severe bruising on her head and face, which indicated she had been beaten with a heavy object repeatedly,
Mm.
there were deep slashes on her face and 4 knife wounds on her neck. The killer had stabbed the jugular.
Oh wow. Which you take that out,
Yeah.
you're done for pretty much.
There was something that baffled the police, though, was the fact that the killer had placed adhesive tape across the wounds on the face and neck as though they were trying to undo the damage caused by the knife.
Oh,
Which when I read that, the first thing that comes to mind is, remember how, especially with like how her face was covered. Remember how I said sometimes killers will, like, when they purposefully hike up the clothes to expose the body, sometimes killers have that feeling of guilt and remorse. So they try to cover it up. And sometimes they don't cover the body, they cover just the face
because
because,
they don't want it to be a nightmare and
like, your eyes and your face, and that's
yeah,
a person, they cover the face. So seeing that the skirt was covering this person's face,
yeah.
the stocking was covering the wounds. It was very much like a, oh, what did I do?
It's like a too late. I can't take it back.
Exactly. Yeah, it feels very weird, almost like a person who lost control
Yeah.
and then immediately came to. So to this a lot of solidified that it was a personal killing, and that kind of again makes sense. For 1940s, serial killers don't really exist at this time, and the sheer brutality was new to many of these officers. This was a once in a lifetime case for officers at the time.
Okay.
Along with the evidence found in the bathtub, the police believe the killer was known to her, and the killer regretted it immediately and tried to patch her up. So, police, thinking it was someone close to her, started looking into her personal life. And she was going on dates, and so they were looking at likely subjects. Her fiance Oscar and on and off again boyfriend Chester Rice were the first two people they looked at. Oscar, though, had an airtight alibi for the afternoon of the murder. He was with another woman, Frances Saron, who was able to say, yes, he was with me at the time of her death.
How dare you?
Yeah. While Josephine's daughter had never really liked Oscar, they did say they never envisioned him hurting or murdering her. Chester Rice, though, they were like, if anyone killed her, it would be him.
Yeah.
Chester Rice was an ex convict who served several years in state prison for a series of grocery store robberies. He had been in her life for more than 2 decades. While they did it on and off again, Josephine really never was really taken with their relationship. It was never serious to her, and she was never willing to connect to him. She even lived with him, and she was like,
Don't like him.
it's just a flame.
Yeah.
It's just. A friend of Chester's, Lewis Brightspeecher, told police he had been with Chester at several different taverns on the morning of the murder and had been with him in the car at the time of Josephine's death, ruling him out as a suspect. Now, aside from the two suspects, the police were lost. The janitor did report seeing a dark haired, well dressed man in his 20s to 30s leaving the building by way of the fire escape between 12 and 1.
Hmm.
Apparently, he was wearing a white sweater that appeared to have bloodstains on the front. According to the janitor, another neighbor confirmed the physical description, though they had nothing to add to it. Um, Later that afternoon, FBI agents in Chicago arrested 32-year-old Lawrence Gates, who was a fugitive from California who fled the state to avoid a burglary charge. While Gates was in custody, the FBI agents believed he matched the description of her killer, and given he was staying a few doors down from the apartment, they contacted Captain Frank Reynolds to notify him as this
Yeah.
might be a suspect. He was determined not to be the killer, and within a couple of months, there were no new leads and there was no new evidence.
Mm.
So, with nothing, the press lost interest. By the winter of 1945, most people had forgotten the murder of Josephine Ross. Her story would come back on the front of the newspapers when in December there was another murder, this time 33-year-old Frances Brown. She was born in Indiana. She had moved to Chicago in 1934, and she was working as a stenographer when the U.S. entered World War II in 1942.
Mm.
Now, she was eager to support the war efforts, so she signed up for WAVES, or Women Accepted for Voluntary Emergency Services.
Okay.
It was a federal program that trained women in non combat skills like radar technician and mapping to assist Navy fighters.
Oh wow. Pretty cool.
Yeah. So her position required her to travel for training. And first, she headed to the naval station at the Great Lakes outside Chicago, and then to Washington, D.C. And then when the war ended in 1945, she returned home to Chicago and happily settled back into her old stenographer job with A.B. Dick and Company. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it.
Did you say AB company? Lady, pick a different job. Oh my god. Wow. Change the name. Change the name. Just change the name. That's just. Where do you work at? AB Dick Company.
So
I work for Dick. Sorry. It was there.
So she resumed the life she had been living before the war. And on the evening of December 10th, she returned home to the apartment she shared with her roommate Viola Butler around 9:30 p.m. When she got into her building, the doorman stopped her and let her know a man had stopped by a few hours before looking for her, but he didn't give a name or say when he would return. The doorman later said it seemed like she was expecting the call. Once upstairs, Frances called her mom to discuss her travel plans for the upcoming holiday, and when she went to the bathroom to wash her hair and get ready for bed. The next morning, the cleaning woman, Martha Ingalls, arrived at the apartment, and she was worried because the front door was slightly ajar and there was a loud music coming from a radio when both Frances and Viola would normally be at work. So she went inside and she found the apartment ransacked, just like Josephine Ross's apartment. There was a large trail of blood on the floor leading to the bathroom, and it looked like someone had tried to soak it up with towels. When she went to the bathroom, she found Frances. Her body was draped over the side of the tub with her head wrapped in towels and resting on the floor of the tub. Her PJ bottoms had been removed and looped around her neck, while her bloody PJ bottoms had been pulled down and were tangled around her feet. There was also a very large bread knife thrust through her neck.
Oh, jeez. He left it there this time.
Its pointed handle protruding beneath each ear.
Wow. Those are big freaking knives.
That's also like a lot of rage and anger.
Yeah.
Now panicked, Martha Ingalls called the police, who arrived quickly. And remember, she was in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to remember that she did not note anything other than her body in the bathroom.
Okay.
And they arrived quick. Ransacked, nothing was stolen. The head was, and she essayed, despite being and the shorts being pulled down. They later came to the conclusion that the reason her shorts were pulled down was because she was dragged, and they came down when she was being dragged. Now, the knife in the neck would be enough to be the cause of death, but when the coroner removed the towels wrapping her head, they found the actual cause of death: a large hole in her head. She had been shot with a .38 caliber bullet fired at close range.
Oh wow. So he's moved up. He slit the other person's throat.
Well, he stabbed the other person's throat.
Stabbed the other person's throat. Sorry. Then he now is shooting in the head and then leaving the weapon in there. What the heck, dude?
Now, you may be thinking, she lived in an apartment. How did no one hear a gunshot?
That'd be my question.
They heard.
They chose not to go check it out.
And I will talk about that. I will talk about that because that pisses me off. There's a lot of cases in here that I will like listen to like a case and I will go, oh fuck, no, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't, because they'll hear a sound and they'll like hear a murder happen and they'll be like, it is what it is. Not our place. So in addition to the head and neck wounds, Frances had been shot in the right shoulder and stabbed in the chest with the same knife that was in her neck.
Dang.
And there were small cuts on her hands and the webbing of her of her fingers,
trying to fight,
indicating she fought with her attacker. The press arrived at the Brown apartment, and this was back in the day when press just walked into crime scenes.
And that still baffles. I mean, no, it does. It baffles me. Like, okay, you're just letting these people walk into a crime scene. They didn't wear booties. They weren't behind tape. You're like, oh yeah, go ahead. Go take a picture of that dog over there.
So
come on.
The press just walked into the crime scene, started taking photos, started talking to the police. They're in like the murder scene, right? And they're talking to one of the reporters is talking to a detective, and another reporter calls out from Brown's bathroom and says there's something you need to see. In the bathroom, written in lipstick was a message that anyone who has heard of this case before has seen the image because there is a photo of it. Um, it says, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself. As for the Ross murder, I cannot control myself." Now remember, the maid never saw this message in the bathroom. Nobody had seen this message before in the bathroom until this one reporter out of nowhere
sees it on the mirror.
Says on the wall.
Oh, on the wall. Okay.
Says, "Oh, look at this thing right here."
And nobody else caught that. The reporter, the killer. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Well, as for the Ross murder, the killer had gotten in because they found that a window was opened when the police arrived, but all the prints were wiped clean, so they couldn't really check for fingerprints.
What about the knife on the neck?
There was that I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
So this was Josephine Ross's murder. So the window, that's how he got in, was a murder. A few days later, after the technicians returned to process that scene, a single bloody fingerprint was found on the bathroom door jamb, and it was smudged there, with no additional evidence found. So the police begins to canvass the apartment complex, and it was successful. So Josephine Ross, no fingerprints. Mind you, again, keep this in mind. They search the house for fingerprints. They leave. They come back. Technicians search the house for fingerprints again, and all of a sudden find a smudged partial print by the door jamb.
That makes no sense.
Keep it in mind. Keep it in mind.
Hold on. Bloody. Fingerprint.
So, a resident on the second floor said they heard the gunshots sometime in the night between 3 and 4 a.m. He didn't call the police, he just went back to bed.
You did not do your job, sir.
The night clerk said he saw a stranger come down the elevator and he fumbled at the door, forgetting it was locked, and he turned to look at the night clerk after he left and he seemed nervous. The clerk described the man as being 35 to 40 years old, 5.5 feet tall, and weighing about 140 pounds. He was wearing a dark overcoat and a dark hat. Now, the investigation after the Ross murder and the Brown murder were stalled as soon as it began. There were no suspect, everyone had alibis, so the police did find some love letters tucked away amongst her things for the Brown murder, but unlike Josephine Ross, Frances' love letters were simple and uncomplicated. She wasn't really dating, there wasn't a lot of potential suitors, but there was no evidence as to who the love letters were for. Now, given the similarities of the murders and the message sprawled on the wall, the press seized on the story and quickly dubbed the murder the lipstick killer. Because the note had been written in lipstick.
Right.
Oh.
He's sitting outside the bathroom.
The next day at a press conference, Captain Reynolds told the press whoever the killer was a maniac and they needed to catch him. Reynolds was also clear.
She's gonna follow you.
Reynolds was also clear that they had not ruled out the idea that the killer was a woman, expanding on this possibility, citing that the killer wrote in lipstick, but also used, I'm quoting here, feminine words like heaven's sake. Because I guess only women's sake, for heaven's sake.
Heaven to Betsy. There's a word for you. Cheese and crackers.
They also pointed out that neither woman was SA'd, and that was another reason they were like, it's a woman.
Doesn't mean shit. Okay. That don't mean
beep. Now, and remember what I told you previously about knives being used, what it often means. That sometimes men who use knives can't get it up.
Oh, yeah, that's true. She did say that in the last one.
Yeah. So Reynolds was also clear that they had not ruled out. The police also pointed out that neither woman was SA'd, and that might be the reason it was a woman. Now, within days, theories about the killer and the motive began to fall apart as soon as the press began to question the possibility the killer was a woman. Reynolds, quote, admitted that the evidence to prove such a theory was purely speculative based on the phrasing of the message left behind the wall. People also pointed to the theory that the killer was a maniac and was a raving madman. It didn't make sense either because how could he be that but also in his right mind to clean up after himself and to wipe down all the things that might have a fingerprint? So he couldn't have been a raving maniac and madman because he obviously has the point of thought to wipe up after himself, to use the towels,
Could
to
be a doctor.
maybe. So
Because
honestly,
wasn't it her husband, Herbert, whatever
yeah,
his name is, like part of the hospital or whatever? Doctored medical things.
could have been a hit.
So, yeah, somebody, I mean, he died. So who was left? The
Who knows?
wife.
Well, we're gonna those two cases. I know, very early we talked about these two cases because we're gonna this case. It's a doozy. It gives me a headache. I hated writing this case. I had to take a break for like 3 days after writing this case. So honestly, the Chicago police had no idea who the murderer was, and all they knew were that the two cases were connected. They're like, we don't know anything else other than they're connected. The same person killed each person.
I give you that clue.
They called him a Jack the Ripper type slayer because the term serial killer hadn't been created. So this was still kind of new to them. The police believe this man had a lust for bloody killings and reasoning that defied conventional beliefs about murder at the time. They believed him to be the man that called on Francis earlier that evening and didn't give his name or when he would be back. And they couldn't ID him either. So police are struggling to move forward. So the press was holding on to this case. They weren't going to do what happened with Josephine Ross, where they wrote on the case and then stopped writing on it, and then another murder happened. No, they decided to be like, we're going to focus on this case and we're going to make sure and put pressure on the police for this case so that they can solve it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the press, yes, was that good intentioned? Yeah, it made it worse. It made it so much worse. Um, it did not ease the feeling of helplessness felt by women in Chicago. The press published an interview with Francis's roommate Viola Butler, who insisted that Francis had no enemies, and she said, "You couldn't be jealous of Francis. She never gave anyone a reason to." The portrait that she painted of Francis was of a chaste, loved, and respected woman. She said Francis didn't like going out. She knitted and did fancy work. She was a total opposite of Josephine Ross. So remember, Josephine's going out on dates, she's going out and about. So again, it's that idea that because she's going on dates, people focus more on Frances Brown's death than they did Josephine Ross's death. And that was because Josephine's going out on dates.
Yeah.
She has like 3 boyfriends at a time. And they're like, oh, it is what it is. But because Frances is a chaste woman, they're going to focus more on her death.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get to the difficult part of the case. We're going to talk about the death of a child. And it is a brutal death. I will give you that heads up.
Okay.
So the police weren't able to solve Josephine Ross and Francis Butler's murder. And this had everyone in Chicago on edge, waiting for the next murder to happen. And there was a demand for the police to show progress in the case.
I'm so sorry, Hermione. And then she's like, what happened?
Yeah, she sleeps with her tongue out now, so now whenever she hears something noise, it's hilarious because she'll go like this, and her tongue will just stick out.
Like it is right now. Yeah. And she goes right back to sleep.
So there's a demand for the police to show progress in the case, and there's like a lot of pressure on the police to solve the case. And the police at this time were not handling that pressure well.
Well, I bet.
The police couldn't seem to handle any criticism, and they decided that they weren't going to take their time. They weren't going to cross their T's and dot their I's. They were getting angry with the public for pushing them to solve the case.
No, I mean, do your job. The outside people shouldn't have to work. Shouldn't have to get you to do it.
And so the police are mad at the press and the public for pushing them so hard. The public is like, why the fuck aren't the police solving this murder?
Yeah.
And the press are like, the police can't solve the murder. And like kind of revving up the public, and the police are getting revved up. It's basically they're at ends. So when this murder occurred on the evening of January 6, 1946, less than a month after the Brown murder, things kind of blew up for the worse. So Helen Degan tucked her 6-year-old daughter Suzanne into bed and kissed her goodnight before saying goodbye to her husband Jim, who was headed to a wake that evening, with plans to return later that evening. When Jim Denegan returned home around 11 p.m., he took the neighbor's dog for a walk, which is super nice. You're so close with your neighbors, you take your neighbor's dog for a
I
walk.
wonder if it was like an elderly person or something.
Yeah.
But they couldn't do it.
And so he returned home and he got ready for bed. And it was at this time he mentioned Suzanne, who was 6 at the time, was going through a phase and wetting the bed. So Jim and Helen actually started to make a habit of checking on her before they went to bed to try and avoid accidents. So they would bring her to the bathroom, let her go, and then take her back to bed. And he said she awakened that night and we were talking and fooling around and joking with her. Jim later recalled the last time he saw his daughter. He said that Suzanne, having gone to the bathroom and sent to bed, he and Helen retired for the evening, but he said he was awoken a short time later when Suzanne woke to tell him that she thought she heard Suzanne crying. She said she didn't want to wake her daughter and rationalized, saying it was the upstairs dog she was hearing.
Okay.
So she went back to sleep. So Jim woke up in the next morning around 6:30 a.m. and he started to get ready for his day. And he finished shaving and went to Suzanne's room and found the door was still shut and assumed she was still in bed, so he opened the door and he was surprised. Is that Jason? Probably. Hermione. Come here. Come here.
It's okay.
Hey. Come here. Hermione. I get it. You got a vicious bark. You've got a vicious bark.
Jason. Well, it's just rent. You're just handing it off. All right. Oh, yeah. No.
If you can't tell, Hermione's kind of freaking out. Oh. She slithered out of her collar. She is concerned about Michelle. Come here. Come here. Put your collar back on.
Bring it out. Give me a moment.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry, our doorbell is broken too. Also, Willow looks a little traumatized.
All right, back up.
It's okay. She's gonna be fine. She's gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay. I know. You don't like the idea that she's out with a stranger. I know.
What?
I know you hear him.
Okay, that's fine.
I know you hear him. It's okay. Michelle is fine.
I'm just gonna fix it. Give him the piece and just told him that you guys we were getting food delivered, and the person rang the doorbell and it went right into our house.
Yeah. So he wakes up and he realizes that Suzanne's not in bed. And what he noticed, which was more alarming to him, was the fact that her window had been opened from a crack to being wide open.
Oh, wow.
Hoping his daughter was just playing a trick,
good girl,
Jim and Helen sent for their other daughter, Betty, to search upstairs apartments while they checked each room in their house.
Mm-hmm.
With neighbors, the Flynns, the family searched the whole entire house, but Suzanne was nowhere to be found, and Jim wasted no time calling the police. Now, in 1945, things were different.
Mm-hmm.
A missing child wouldn't have raised the same alarm bells that it raises nowadays.
Yeah.
The police were like, the child was just playing a trick. They would say, don't worry about it. They'll just be home soon. Maybe they're a runaway. Like, it was, even if they're 6 years old, it was not a cause of concern.
Come on.
Thankfully, Jim Degan was a respected person. He was actually an executive with the Price administration,
Mm-hmm.
so he used his influence to call local law enforcement and the FBI. He was like, I'm going to use my resources for what I need to use them for.
There you go.
So as soon as the call was placed, the Degan home was crawling with detectives and FBI agents, and they were eager to solve the case of a missing girl. Before the press was able to make a big story about it, because the press is making a big story about everything the police is failing to do. Now, despite them trying to keep the press at bay, it did not work. By 10 a.m., the sidewalk in front of the house was crawling with reporters and photographers trying to break the story because of the scrutiny over the Ross and Brown murders, along with other crimes. The press was writing essentially, the police were bumping and bumbling and not handling cases properly. So police start combing through.
It's fine.
Hey, stop. Stop.
Shh. Shh. He's testing the doorbell.
Quick. Nope. Stop. Stop. Stop.
Oh, no. Come in. Come here.
Come here. It's fine.
He was testing the doorbell because he was fixing
the doorbell.
It. Stop. You goof.
It's the way you would go stop and she'd stay silent and just
go. Right? Back talker.
So
good girl, but stop. He's fixing stuff.
So police start combing through every inch of the scene to avoid blunders and criticisms because they're not taking the criticism well.
Right.
So right outside Suzanne's window, they find a wooden ladder that appeared to be how the kidnapper got in.
Oh, wow.
So,
and what floor are they on?
Like the second or third floor. So like he had climbed up, gotten the kid, and they assumed he went down the ladder as well. So a cursory search found the police there were no signs of blood or struggle. Nothing was broken or fallen over, but on the floor beside the bed there was a handwritten note on a piece of paper resembling a discarded tissue, and when it was unfolded, it was a ransom note that read, "Get $20,000 ready and wait for word. Don't notify FBI or police. Bills in 5s and 10s."
Okay.
The note was covered in an oily substance, and on the back, the kidnapper had written a postscript that said, "Burn this for her safety."
Hermione, stop. Nope. Come here. Sit down. You're going to upset Dad. Stop it. Good job.
I don't know if you can hear it, but every single time that she's telling her to no, stop it, she's going like this. She's huffing and puffing.
Grunting.
And she's just staring at the door.
He's trying to He's trying to fix the doorbell because when they had ordered food, and the person that went to do the doorbell, we try to tell them not to ring the doorbell because of that reason. Because when she barks, the cats take off, and it's like, mayhem when you have the dog that barks at everything, even her own fart.
That is true.
She'll bark. So it's like it freaking her out because he's doing that.
So
looks at the peephole, see if he's.
Degnan was like, it's too late to call the police, but I can get the money. There's no way to find out where to meet the drop off though. So he's like, where are we supposed to drop off?
He's going home.
So he's like, I don't know where I'm supposed to drop off the money. All I know is I need to get $20,000 and I'm going to get that $20,000. I'm going to do what I can to get my daughter back.
Good job.
And he wasn't just going to wait around for like some form of contact. He went on a radio show, WMAQ, to indicate his willingness to cooperate with the kidnappers and plead for his daughter's safe return. He said, if you have any sympathy or understanding in your heart, you will return the child to the family. He said, please let me know what I can do, how I can contact you. I'll give you the money. I'll do anything to get my child back. If you harm her, God will repay you. So his time on the radio caused a wave of responses. Some people were reporting tips, and others were doing what people do. And they were trying to say they were the kidnappers so they could get the money.
Of course.
None of this would matter, though, because later that evening, around 7 p.m., two detectives searching around the Degnam home noticed that dirt around a manhole cover was disturbed, and it looked like someone had been in the sewer system. When they removed the cover and shined their flashlights down, they first thought it was a doll's head floating at the top of some debris in the water. However, when they got a closer look, they realized to their horror they had discovered Susan Degnan's severed head in the sewer.
Ay. Damn.
Which now you see why people are saying the cases are not related.
Jeez.
Investigators and volunteers combed the sewers and streets above and eventually found a ton of other dismembered body parts. So she was like truly dismembered. Like they cut off her hands from her, like she was like cut up.
Wow.
So the discovery that she was dead was the worst possible news that they could get for very obvious reason. It also gave the press another sensational story that quickly somehow became tied to the Ross and Brown murder. Even though there was no similarities, there was nothing the same. The press said it was the same killer. The gruesome discovery dominated the headlines of all 5 major Chicago papers, with each giving detailed accounts of the discovery, referring to the murder as even too horrible for a maniac and referring to the killer as the mad butcher of Kenmore Avenue.
Oh, see, that's I hate to say that. That's like a not cooler name, but like more of a descriptive name than the lipstick killer.
So while they're reporting the news, they were also riling up the people. And that can be a good thing. Because of the reporting, 2 citizens called the Chicago Tribune to separately offer $500 rewards for the arrest and conviction of Suzanne's murder. Chicago police were concerned with the killings of Ross and Brown because they were bad enough murders. But now there's a dismembered child in the sewers, raising public alarm even higher.
Wow.
Knowing there would be public outcry, police and patrol officers fanned right across the neighborhood in search for clues. The most compelling leads that they had was the dust coal found on the bottom of Suzanne's feet, and detectives assumed she had been killed in one of the cellars in the neighborhood because that's where you would find coal dust at the time.
Yeah.
They assumed her abductor knew where she knew her and lived close to where she was. So officers began searching house to house, the cellars where there was coal. In the basement of a house on Winthrop Street, just a block from the Degnan house, police found what they called the murder room. Among the discoveries in the basement, there were 4 large tubs, bloodstains on the coal bin, a bloody pushcart, and several lockers that held residents' belongings. one of which had been broken open and contained a hacksaw and several garment bags that matched what the body was found in. In a floor drain, police found pieces of flesh and strands of blonde hair that matched Suzanne's.
Okay.
So not everyone in the building is to be questioned, or anyone that had access to the building needed to be questioned. So they sent for the building superintendent, Hector Verberg, a Belgian immigrant widely known and well liked by the neighborhood. Hector said he knew Suzanne by sight and he had only ever said hello, but he did say, "I'm friendly with all the neighborhood children."
Mm-hmm.
He would also find and fix toys for families that couldn't afford to buy them new toys.
Oh, that's nice of him.
He asked how when asked how anyone could access the basement, Hector said, "I don't know anything about that. Anybody could get in." According to Hector, only he and the tenants in the building had keys to the basement,
Hmm.
but the windows were left open so anyone could go through the windows.
And
Now,
if it's coal dust, you really don't want. I don't know if you'd want the coal dust, like you say it's in the basement.
yeah.
Coal dust was. I'm trying to verbalize it. The windows are left open,
Hmm.
so my thought would be, if it's coal dust, people are down there, they're kicking it up, kicking around the coal dust. And back then, even if you're mining for coal, you can get that stuff in your lungs. So
Yeah.
maybe windows were open because of that. If people are going down there
Exactly.
to
So
get it,
there was a reasonable explanation. Nobody in the building could have killed her. It could have just been somebody who walked by, saw the windows were open, and went in.
yeah,
Doesn't mean someone in the building killed her.
yeah. But they gotta do their job,
We're gonna get to the police doing
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 their
their
job.
job. Now, given his access to the building, police began to suspect Hector as the killer. They escorted him back to his apartment where they found a saw and a hatchet, but they had nothing on them. There was no blood, there was
Of
no nothing on them.
course, they would assume that because he sat there and goes, "I'm friendly with all the children."
Yes, but also remember he gave toys to the kids. Mind you, he's also like a grandparent's age.
Okay,
He's like a giant grandpa.
not saying that older people can't do this, but okay,
But to give you clarification, he has grandchildren.
okay,
And another reason the police began to pick on him was because he was an immigrant, and they didn't like the fact he was an immigrant.
get over it.
So they had taken into
He's
evidence.
not out there, Hermione.
Um, so they were taken into evidence, and they showed no signs of being used in a crime. And at the station, the police began to question Hector, who in the beginning was cooperative, but became less so as the night wore on because it became clear to him that he was the main suspect. Patrol officers were still canvassing the neighborhood and starting to speak to neighbors about Hector, and they were all shocked to hear he was a suspect. He was an indulgent parent and grandfather, and he didn't seem like a killer. One neighbor told the press he can't be the murderer because he loves children. He has 7 grandchildren of his own, and he spent every minute with them that he could. The more police learned, the less likely of a suspect he became. He seemed as harmless as a fly. His wife said Hector was in bed at 10 p.m. and was in bed the night of the kidnapping. Many people also reported seeing a suspicious, bare-headed, heavy-set man either parked or driving slowly through the neighborhood in a gray car around 2 a.m., and that description did not match what Hector looked like. Now, a coroner's inquest was held on January 9th when it confirmed her cause of death was strangulation and the dismemberment had happened after she was dead. And it was done with a large, sharp knife, nothing else.
No hatchet, no axe, no
No,
hacksaw, no nothing. A knife.
nothing that was taken from Hector's house. The coroner said it was a clean job. There were no signs of hacking, and several coroners actually said the same thing. The person who killed her knew anatomy and had experience of either a butcher or a hunter.
Gotta be a surgeon. It's gotta be a hospital person.
And someone else said it was an expert because she was dismembered at the joints.
It's gotta be a doctor. It has to be somebody. I'm sorry, that's my theory, right there. Because they know now. I'm not saying that normal people that have never gone
But
to
you don't
school
know
for a
exactly
hospital,
where the joints are in like a body unless you've looked at a body.
or you studied it. And you
Exactly.
don't even have, and people don't even go to school to study that stuff. They could study it. You freaking go to a bookstore and buy an anatomy book just to
But
look at that crap.
even to do it as cleanly, that's what they're saying. To do it as cleanly as it was done,
Yeah,
That isn't just book smarts.
No.
That's having actually worked
You
with a body before.
So you've either been a coroner yourself because you work with bodies,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
A hunter or a butcher, they said, was possible people.
Or not only that, well, grave digger works with bodies, but they only dig the graves. I mean, there's a multiple of people.
So, despite all of the evidence pointing away from Hector, police still had him as their main suspect.
Is he a butcher?
Almost to justify why the police were focusing on Hector, Detective Jack Hanneram told reporters in the furnace at Hector's building several small bones were found. Also,
Sorry.
which might have been the arms of little Suzanne. That was not true. They were animal bones.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't they? They just sat there and said that they found the rest of her in the sewer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pay attention. Y'all may think I don't. I do.
So he's like, "Oh, we found burnt bones. They're
mean,
Suzanne's arms." No, they weren't. They were animal bones.
Somebody needs to learn anatomy.
So there's a lot of media pressure, and Hector was an immigrant, and so there's a lot of racism going on here because he's an immigrant.
Yeah, of course there is.
And there was a lot of anti-immigration scattered into it too. The press expect little objectivity or responsible journalism when they wrote about the gruesome crimes and the statements about Hector, and a lot on him being an immigrant and his limited English.
So, come on.
James Frutal, a neighbor of Hector, recalled how people turned on Hector. He said one of the tenants in the building came rushing up to me, red faced and wide eyed, declaring we should lynch him. Remember, he had not, we should lynch him. Like they ran up to him and said, we need to lynch him. He had not been charged with any crime. They just said he was a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Now, police keeps questioning and harassing Hector, and his wife is demanding a polygraph test. She's like, let's do a polygraph test. If you think it's him, he'll do a polygraph test and it'll prove it's not him.
They denied him doing it.
When he refused their tactics, they got more aggressive and they attempted to beat the confession out of him. Mind you, Grandpa. When the awful beating failed to elicit a confession, detectives finally released him, declaring he was no longer a suspect.
After they beat the crap out of him?
And this was his reasoning.
Hospitalized him?
That if he still denied any involvement after suffering such abuse, he must be innocent. That was...
That's like a witch, taking a witch and putting her in water, and if she drowns, she's a witch. If she don't, what is it? If she don't drown,
if she doesn't drown, she's a witch. If she does drown, she's not a witch.
That's calling the kettle black.
So they beat him and went, oh yeah, we beat him so badly. If he didn't confess to the murders, he couldn't have done it. He's innocent.
Good.
Again, Grandpa.
I'm going to make a t-shirt that says, so, come on.
So, that is like actually what the police said. So James Friedel told reporters, I heard what they did to Hector. He had a shoulder separated that left him permanently disabled.
Hospital. They said hospitalized, but...
Following his release, Hector went to the hospital for treatment of his injuries, where he told a nurse, oh, they hanged me up. They blindfolded me. I can't put up my arms. They are so sore. They put handcuffs on me for hours, and they threw me in a cell and blindfolded me. They handcuffed my hands behind my back and pulled me up on the bars until my toes touched the floor.
Jeez.
I didn't eat. I go right to the hospital. So they were literally holding him up like this on the bars until his toes touched the floor.
Wow, and I can see why his shoulder separated.
Mm-hmm.
Dislocated his shoulder.
Oh, go right to the hospital. I'm so sick anymore, and I would have confessed to anything.
Wow.
Yeah. The Chicago Police Department denied any abuse occurred to Hector, but his wife and another man who was detained during this time filed a suit against seven members of the police department, alleging physical abuse, false arrest, and unlawful search and seizure. The night before the civil trial was set, the Chicago Police Department settled for $20,000.
Per person or all together?
All together.
So what? They each get $10,000?
Yeah.
That's because you're copping
They
out
gave
because
they
you know
gave
you
him
did
hush
wrong.
money. They gave him hush money.
Exactly. That's why I say you copped out, so you cover your ass.
Now, the abuse of suspects and the reckless release of information reflected the desperation and frustration by the police as for the outcry of the Ross Brown murders and the murder of Suzanne. Police, not knowing what to do, began to grasp at straws. So when the Hector theory failed, people began to say it was two kidnappers. They continued to arrest and question various suspects, including a man recently released from a psychiatric hospital and a local black man who was subjected to a polygraph test but was ruled out when he passed. And the fact was, there was no other evidence for this case. After spending 5 months chasing 3,000 tips, conducting 300 interviews, performing 170 polygraphs, the police were no closer to finding the killer than when they had first began. So now we're going to go somewhere else for a second. We're going to go to Phoenix, real close.
2-hour drive. Let's go.
Yeah. A jury in Phoenix had found a man named Richard Thomas, who was 42 years old, guilty of unnatural sex acts and attempted essay of his 10-year-old daughter.
Oh, hell no.
And there's a reason I am mentioning this. Citing a guilty conscience, Thomas suddenly admitted to Arizona detectives he was responsible for killing Suzanne Degnan in Chicago earlier that year. According to Thomas, he had frequent spells accompanied by unnatural sexual urges, and he would resort to theft and robbery for quick money. In January, he was working at Woodlawn Hospital in Chicago.
Okay.
And on the night of January 7th, he told his supervisor he was sick and left work at 10 p.m. because he knew he had to rob someone for money. He picked the Dengan house because it looked like they had had money or jewels in it. And at first, he planned to use the painted ladder he had taken from a yard down the street and even put it against the house next to Suzanne's open window. And then he remembered he had several master keys for locks, and one happened to fit in the front door of their home.
What the frick?
Once inside, he entered Suzanne's room, found her sleeping. He said when he walked into her room, he realized he could make a lot of more money by kidnapping her. So I scribbled a note on some brown paper I had brought to wipe away my fingerprints. According to Thomas, she never woke up as he carried her out of the house and down the street, and she only began screaming a few blocks away. Now, worried her screaming would alert someone, Thomas said he put a bag over her head and covered her mouth until she stopped screaming. Now, the thing was, that inadvertently killed her. Because I don't know if you know this, but if you put a bag over somebody's head, you can suffocate them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he apparently didn't know that. So, when he realized he had inadvertently killed her, he dropped her body in an open coal chute at the house on Winthrop Road, then slid down the chute himself. There he said he dismembered her with the surgical tools he had brought with him. Now, because Suzanne's story was making national headlines, the Arizona detectives were actually familiar with the case. And sensing he was telling the truth, detectives in Arizona contacted Chicago, and much to Arizona's surprise, the police in Chicago didn't seem interested in his confession. Though Chicago chief detective acknowledged there was enough in Thomas's story to warrant a thorough investigation,
Mm-hmm.
he added Thomas might be trying to get out of being sentenced in Arizona on the rape charge.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but you'll get more time in prison for kidnapping than you will for SA. So how is he trying to confess to kidnapping and murder, trying to get him out of a SA charge? That's
Mm-hmm. I mean, the dude ain't thinking right. Tell you that much. You dumb.
well, there was a reason that Chicago was eager to minimize the confession. It became clear when there was an announcement of the arrest of the killer of Josephine Ross, Frances Brown, and Stephanie Degnan. On the morning of June 26, just hours before the detectives in Arizona contacted Chief Storms for Thomas's confession, neighbors near the Degnans spotted what they believed to be a prowler leaving the home of some occupants belonging to someone that had been burglarized. So they alerted two police officers to the prowler. And after cornering the suspect on a set of stairs, police tried to subdue the young man who fought back and almost managed to break free. He tried to break free until a neighbor intervened by dropping a heavy flower pot on his head, knocking him unconscious.
Like the cartoon. All I'm seeing is like a cartoon phone.
Now, upon his arrest, the suspect was taken to a nearby hospital to be treated for a traumatic brain injury, where he was identified as William Dearens. He was a 17-year-old and he was a student at the University of Chicago. He was a sophomore. He was also the son of a police sergeant.
Oh.
Now, he did have a criminal record. Despite his young age, Hirons was arrested for burglary dating years back. His arrest was in 1942 when he was 13 years old.
Okay.
Hirons was arrested for burglarizing a neighbor's home and then accidentally starting a fire. But following his arrest, he confessed to 11 more burglaries in the neighborhood. Now, another arrest followed a year later, and when Hirons was caught sneaking out of a building after burglarizing 7 of the apartments inside, officers discovered several of the keys in the boy's possessions that were traced to the apartments in Northside that had been robbed. He was a thief, a shitty thief, and he was not the brightest bulb in the bunch. Nothing about his MO screams killer.
Yeah.
He's only ever burglarized. He's only ever robbed homes or apartments. He's never shown an ounce of violence.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the investigators were able to identify him with fingerprints because of his criminal record. The flower pot had knocked him unconscious, so he wasn't able to give a statement.
Wish I could do it like a little picture of a cartoon person getting a flower pot dropped on his head.
Well, detectives and some doctors believed he was actually faking his symptoms, which he actually did admit to doing later on. It was never made clear why he was considered a suspect in the Degnan murder or the Ross and Brown murders, because there's no clear reason.
Yeah.
The suspicion of burglary and resisting arrest was enough for them to take fingerprints and submit them for the FBI for analysis. Despite not having the results yet, Captain Emmett Evans told reporters, "I'm convinced the 2 prints brought out in this case was made by the same person." Remember, the fingerprints were smudged.
Mm-hmm.
That means they're unusable.
Yep. Because you have to have enough of the fingerprint just to be able to get anything off of it.
Exactly. He was also saying the man that killed Ross and Brown, who covered their heads, attacked and brutally chopped up a little girl, was the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Which, no, that's not how that works. You don't do what you do for 2 killings and all of a sudden go
and switch it to something else.
Kill a child when most of your victims seem to be 30-year-old women.
Yeah.
That's a victimology that's wide ranging.
Yeah.
Now, there is no evidence for any of this again. So instead of going, oh, the man who confessed in Arizona, maybe he's our guy. Nah. They went, the 17-year-old's our guy. Fuck the guy in Arizona. It wasn't police that thought to check on William Hirons' prints. It was a reporter named James Gavin, a reporter from the Chicago Tribune, who was like, why not compare his to the ones of the smudged ones you have? Yeah. So the police didn't even think to check his fingerprints against the smudged fingerprints they had. A news reporter was like, why don't you check them?
Pretty sad news reporter doing your job. That's sad. Come on.
So the police arrested him for prowling and burglary, and a reporter asked, if you think he murdered that child, you should check his fingerprints. And the police are like, oh my God, you're so smart. We're going to go ahead and do that.
Let's hire you to do our job.
So Captain Evans was like, Yes, and he grabbed the sergeant in real time as they go to the exam room for 10 minutes, come back and announce they're the exact same fingerprints. Now, I don't know about you, but it takes longer than 10 minutes to see if fingerprints match.
Yeah.
And you can't go into an exam room and compare fingerprints that way.
No.
But you know what? Captain Evans he's a captain. He's a police officer. He knows best.
Sure.
Again, remember, they're partials and smudged. Not even the technology we have now could prove if they were the same fingerprints.
Mm-hmm.
So detectives now start trying to get Hirons to talk because Hirons was like, I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Way to go.
Officers searched his dorm room where they found 2 medical kits containing a surgical saw and a scalpel set, as well as items stolen from other homes, including war bonds amounting to $2,100, jewelry, and some things were several knives and guns that had been reported and stolen and missing around Chicago. They found a photo album of Nazi soldiers and guards. They don't know if this was stolen or if it was actually his. And much like Hector, they beat the shit out of him. See how he kept his mouth shut because he knew. And I'll talk about that. He actually later on I talk about how he read in the paper what they did to Hector, and he goes, "If I open my mouth, I knew what they were going to do to me, and I didn't want it to happen to me because I'm not as strong."
Yeah.
He knew he couldn't withstand any torture, so he's like, I'm zipping it.
Yeah.
So the press made no point in being objective, and they made a point to associate William Hirons with the murders, despite there being absolutely no evidence. They reported on him being good at football, having a hint of a sneer, and claimed it took 4 policemen to bring him in, and quoted an offer saying they needed straps to subdue him. Now, this isn't true. If you look up a photo of him, he couldn't do any of that. He was a skinny, scrawny kid. Remember, he was arrested by 2 officers, and a flower pot was dropped on his head by a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Not 4 officers, and he was unconscious when they brought him to the hospital, so there's no way you could have put straps on him.
Yeah, because he was out. So these newspapers, like a tabloid,
Yeah.
lies.
He when he was brought into the hospital, he believed he was arrested for burglary and was shocked to find he was now a suspected killer. He remembered how Hector said he had been tortured in an effort to get him to confess. Hirons later said, "My best bet was to keep my eyes closed and my mouth shut. If the police thought he was unconscious and seriously hurt, they could take me to the police station and hang me over the door by my arms, as I heard they had done to Hector."
Mm.
Hirons knew he couldn't keep it up, so he asked a nurse for a glass of water, and that's when they alerted everyone that he was awake now. Locked in an exam room, one wave after another of detectives took their turns with him and tried to get a confession out of him. At first, police told him they had arrested his mom and put her with the prostitutes.
And that sounds about right because they'll threaten you to get you to say anything.
And when they said they'd arrested his girlfriend Joanne and would keep grilling her until he confessed and would not let her go home hour after hour, he sat there waiting for his parents. Now, a fun little thing about United States law is if you're under 18,
Yep.
you need a parent.
Yep.
He was waiting for his parents. His parents never came.
Oh wow.
One detective after another questioned him, and they were shouting details of Suzanne murders. Um, and he was waiting for his parents' arrival because he thought they were going to take him away. They thought they would get him out of it. And he grew more anxious as time went on, and the police got more aggressive. One detective started telling him they matched his fingerprints to the Degnan case, and he realized they truly believed they were going to stick him for the crime. He stayed silent until he heard one of them saying something about ether, an old medieval torture technique. And they said, I can make this guy talk. Ether is a mix of drugs, that is, aka a truth serum.
Mm.
It just made people more susceptible to what was being said. And it could make people confess to things they didn't do. He remembers one of the men saying, "Ain't none of them can keep still with this," and a moment later he smelled it, because it was also an anesthetic at the time. One of the men lifted his hospital gown to expose his genitals. He had no idea what was happening.
Oh, wow.
And then he felt several drops of ether hit his scrotum, causing an intense feeling of cold, followed by excruciating pain.
Wow.
It is described as a volatile liquid. Now, despite physical and mental torture, he kept his mouth shut. His parents were at home trying to deal with all the reporters who had descended on their home, and when his mom first heard the announcement, her heart sank, and she didn't know what could be done to fix this. She said after all his burglaries, they would naturally suspect Bill. It did not take much imagination to suggest the kinds of pressure the police could bear on a 17-year-old boy. So detectives continued to try to coerce a confession. They tore apart Hiram's homes looking for evidence. Now, Chicago police finally got to questioning Richard Thomas, who, of course, recanted his whole entire story and told a completely different one.
Oh, my Lord.
He said he just wrote the ransom note for the killer. He claimed he had nothing to do with the kidnapping and murder, and he just wrote the note.
God.
That's right. He didn't kill her. He didn't kidnap her. Just a guy came up to him and said, "Hey, will you write this kidnapping note for me?" And he went, "Sure."
If that is the case, then you've seen the person.
He said, "This man asked me a few days before the kidnapping if I wanted to go on a snatch with him. When I refused because he was like, 'I have a long criminal record. I shouldn't snatch kids.' The man said if Thomas could at least write a note. Thomas agreed to, and later that day the child was taken and killed. Thomas saw him washing blood off his hands in the bathroom, which several families used." Chief Storm's resistance to his confession was weird to Arizona detectives because they were like, "This man literally confessed to what was happening."
Yeah.
And because they had not gotten word that they had arrested Hirons at the time and had declared him the killer with absolute no evidence. So Arizona detectives are like, "I literally have this man right here. Yes, he's recanting his story, but here he is. He's already given us a confession." And Chief Storms is like, "Nope." And the Arizona detectives are like, "What the fuck? We literally just solved a murder crime for you." Like, because they had not gotten word from the press that they had arrested somebody else. So, under these circumstances, Richard Thomas's confession would have complicated their whole theory and their whole case. And they could explain away a lot, but they could not explain away the fact that Phoenix had examined the handwriting and compared it to the ransom note, and had unmistakable similarities, saying it was most likely written by the same person. So Phoenix PD is like, "Well, I know they said it's most likely not him, but we have a copy of the note here. So I'm going to go ahead and do some investigating, and you know what? It looks like it was written by him." So Phoenix PD is over here states away, thousands and thousands of miles away, and is like, "I guess we're going to do your job for you."
Not surprised.
Chicago police went nowhere with that. And in the days after Hiron's arrest, he remained silent and refused to cooperate with investigators, believing if he didn't say anything, he couldn't get in trouble. So, nevertheless, detectives started building a case against him, routinely releasing info to the press that was not always accurate, that would be touted as irrefutable evidence. And none was more compelling than the fingerprint evidence that tied him to the case. The original Suzanne Degnan case was processed by the FBI and found 2 fingerprints on the front of the note. After his arrest, Hirons, the handwriting officer from Chicago Police Department, reviewed the prints and declared they're incomplete and impossible to classify. These fingerprints could not be used. He compared them to all persons arrested in January and June of that year and found no matches. despite Hirons have been arrested in May, and so his fingerprints would have been included.
Hmm.
3 days after Hirons was arrested, that
Right.
same analyst said the prints found on the note was William Hirons.
Well, he wrote the freaking note.
No. William Hirons is a 17-year-old kid.
Right.
William Hirons,
Oh, that's not the guy that wrote it.
yeah, there's two stories going on.
Yeah.
William Hirons is, remember, they checked the fingerprints and he goes, I've checked the fingerprints from everyone who was arrested from January to June. No fingerprints match, even though Hirons was arrested in May. So his fingerprints would have already been added. They would have already looked at it.
Right.
And now 3 days later, that same analyst is saying Hirons' fingerprints match.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're just absolutely lying at this point. They're doing whatever they can. So not only was the police consistently telling the press about irrefutable evidence, it was also the DA's office saying this. Detectives continued to question him and he was staying silent. When he refused to talk or give them answers, detectives resulted in physical torture, including a nurse performing a spinal tap without anesthesia.
Oh, jeez.
They claimed it was being done to rule out brain damage, but it was just torture. It was a way to torture them.
Wow.
Now, on June 30th, William Hirons submitted himself to a polygraph test and he passed it. But when it was given to the media, they said it was inconclusive and futile.
Good Lord.
So when the polygraph did not show what they wanted, the state's attorney, William Tohey, agreed to pay a psychologist, Dr. Roy Ginker, a fee of $1,000 to administer sodium pentothal against William's wishes. And this was going to be another form of truth serum. When the truth serum thing was leaked, Tohey denied it because he knew he would lose his job.
Not really.
Despite his clumsy denials, he testified under oath in 1952 in a post-conviction review of the case. He admitted he was not only fully aware they used the drug, but he was the one that ordered and authorized the payment for the doctor. He never suffered any repercussions for it.
That's not cool.
So they're still questioning him, and they keep bringing up the fingerprints. And so the FBI and fingerprints expert considered a 12-point match the bare minimum for compelling fingerprint evidence. Williams' fingerprint only had 9 points, and the 9-point loop pattern that matched with Hiram's also matched 65% of the population.
Jeez. Oh my gosh.
So literally, it could have been 65% of the population had this fingerprint.
You're all related.
The evidence was circumstantially speculative or manufactured, and it took it to trial at the moment. And if they took it to trial at that moment, he would have been released. So they needed a confession. They also needed to paint him as a criminal mastermind. So the press wrote on his criminal history and they started making up stories. In fact, one falsely reported that William Hirons had confessed. Now, on July 2nd, he was transferred from the hospital to in the infirmary of Cook County Jail, where he spent a week recovering from the initial head injury and the injuries sustained during his questioning when they tortured him.
Wow.
After a week, the defense attorney was assigned to him, and he wasn't of much help. Hirons' attorney, John Coughlin, was summoned to the DA's office where they were offered a deal. The deal was that if he confessed publicly to all 3 murders, the state would not give him the death penalty, and the penalty would just be 1 lifetime. He would go to jail for burglary and not the murders, but he still had to confess. Without speaking to his client, Coughlin agreed for William to accept the deal and confess, reasoning they stood no chance with a jury, and the result would be him getting the death penalty.
Wow.
Which, by the way, unethical. So later, Coughlin said it was William's idea to agree to the plea. It was not that he was never informed. The lawyer said ethically it was the right thing for him to do. There was no ethics in this decision. It was unethical. This whole entire case is unethical.
Yeah, they're just trying to pin it on somebody so they can close it.
If it wasn't the torture that got William Hirons to confess, or the questioning, or the plea deal that was agreed to by his lawyer, it was the Chicago Tribune falsely claiming he confessed to all three murders, claiming they were robberies gone wrong, and the other papers reported it too.
Wow.
Reminder, nothing was stolen. How can it be a burglary? By the end of the day, all of Chicago believed he was a confessed killer. Hiron's lawyer in 2002 clemency appeal wrote the Chicago Tribune broke his spirit and his will. Out of options, he agreed to the plea and, per the agreement, prepared to go in front of the state's attorney and chief of police and confess to all three murders. Hirons didn't know that wasn't just going to be them. They had invited everyone who worked for the case and countless reporters and photographers to take photos of him confessing.
Yeah, now I can see why. Now I can see why now they don't let you stupid reporters in. I understand you got to get a story. 100%. Great. Good for you. But obviously, there's going to be that one idiot. Oh, let's just say that he confessed to it. Let's say you do it because then everybody's going to jump aboard. Everybody's
Also,
going
I
to take a
will
piece of
say,
that.
news reporting was very different back then.
Apparently, they're all walking all over the damn evidence.
Yeah, maybe even adding evidence.
Let's put this hair right here.
On July 30th, he stood before the room shocked and was asked by Tohi to confess. But rather than live up to the end of his deal, he said, I don't know anything about him.
Nice.
Outraged, the DA took the plea away but offered a second one. This time they took the concurrent away, and he would receive 3 life sentences consecutively, and he would avoid the death penalty. So, because everyone believed he had already confessed, even though he hadn't, he agreed to the plea. And this time, he wouldn't back out on it. On August 3rd, he publicly confessed to murdering Josephine Ross, Frances Brown, and Suzanne Degnan, during which he provided details. In a statement to the press, Tohi said he was willing to negotiate a plea deal for a confession because of his desire to make certain, not only in his mind, but also the satisfaction of the public, that Hirons was the murderer. As part of his plea, he had to describe in detail and even reenact the murders. On August 7th, he spent more than 8 hours describing what was done. He also followed as they traveled from spot to spot. Someone who was following said, he doesn't look like his photos. He looks gruesome. The thing with the description wasn't it this is how it was. So basically, one being questioned about how the murders happened, this was how they were asking. Why did you get your knife? When did you get your knife?
Yeah.
When you stabbed her in her neck, why did you stab her in the neck? Like, it wasn't even a confession. It was a coerced confession. Why did you put something over her face? A skirt. Why'd you put the thing over her face? Oh, I put the skirt over her face for this reason.
And who's to say with these murders happened? He didn't already know what was he is in the paper. Who's to say he can't read that crap?
Yeah, but also he's being walked through it by the lead detective.
He's being led. Well, as you said, coerced, but
Yeah,
also what they say, leading the witness or something like that.
yeah. And he would be like, you got the knife from the drawer, and he would go, yeah. And isn't this the one you took out of Roderick's home? And he'd be like, yeah, I took that out of Roderick's home.
Wow.
So he was reading his description on September 4th, 1946. Hirons appeared in circuit court where 3 psychologists said he was legally sane but emotionally abnormal. So it ruled out an insanity plea and made it possible to be sentenced. The following day, he was in court for sentencing, where he was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences, but not eligible for parole until after 61 years. Now, the evidence and theories, none of it supported William Hirons. He didn't even match the description that people gave for who the killer was. Remember, people saw the killer, 20 to 30 years old, nice looking.
But they didn't care. They didn't. Some of my thought is the police didn't care. They didn't want to do the work. They didn't want to stop from sitting behind a desk, eating their donuts, drinking their coffee, talking about football or whatever. They didn't want to do the dang job. They wanted to sit there and just cover it up, pinpoint the one person. Can't pin it on the old man because
Yeah.
why? He kept his mouth shut. They tried to get him to confess to him. He didn't want to confess. Smart on his end. And then you've got a dumb 17-year-old. Now, the only reason why I'm saying he's dumb is because look at all the stuff he's done. You do make dumb mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And no, everything that they're saying that this kid supposedly did does not match his MO for what he fucking did. He did not steal, burglarized. Okay, there's probably multiple ways of describing burglarizing. You can go and ransack in the house. That's burglarizing. You're ripping it apart. Why? Because you're trying to find something that's going to be of value.
Yeah.
Like
But killing somebody by putting a knife through their neck out of nowhere?
and it's like you're not you cops in the 40s. You suck. You suck. You obviously cannot
Oh, we're not, it's
do
not
your
just the cops.
damn job.
It's not just the cops in the 40s. We're seeing all these inconsistencies, right?
Yeah.
We're going to get to like present day.
FBI, you suck too.
Years later, after many appeals, a team of experts reviewed the evidence and came to the conclusion that the handwriting in the note was not a match for Hiram's. It bore a similarity to Richard Thomas. The handwriting at the Browns murder also didn't match either. In fact, several members of the team believed it was a member of the press that wrote it to make the case more sensational.
Ah.
The fingerprint on the note matched 65% of the population, and the fingerprint at the Browns case was a roll, like one given on a police fingerprint card, not what is left behind.
Yes, because they have to when they do your fingerprint, you do the black stuff, the ink, and then they make you go from left to right
Uh-huh.
on each finger to get a full on, and you have to get all of it. So it's like you're not just rolling it from. They want the whole dang.
And that's the thing. It was a roll. It wasn't what would be normally left behind. It was planted evidence.
So staged.
Finally, analysis of his confession revealed numerous inconsistencies between the confession and known facts of the case, including location, time, and related events. In 1954, he appealed his sentence on numerous grounds, ranging from illegal search and seizure to false arrest and abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It was shot down by the Supreme Court, who concluded that the petitioner on the issue is adequately supported by the evidence. He filed other appeals and they were all denied, and in 1995 he filed his last appeal, which resulted in the appellate court upholding the previous rulings, where he was basically told, stop, we don't want to hear anymore. After 61 years, he went up for parole in 2007. He told the Chicago Tribune, I figured I'm getting out this year. He was denied parole, though, because he could not admit to what he did.
But you sat there and promised him. You made a promise on paper.
Also, all of the evidence, everything is pointing he didn't do it, and the Supreme Court's like, nah, the evidence is real.
Wow.
And one
Supreme Court, you suck.
One parole board member said, I haven't heard I'm sorry for committing the crimes.
Crimes he didn't commit? Does he need to apologize if he picks his nose?
It would be his last bid for parole. Because on March 5th, 2012, he was found unresponsive in his cell at the Dixon Correctional Facility and was transported to the Illinois Medical Center, where he was pronounced dead from complications of diabetes at 83 years old.
So he didn't even get help for his diabetes. As we sit here and drink soda and Alani.
This case is the most frustrating because I firmly believe William Hirons wasn't the killer. and he died in prison.
Because of it. Dude, hey, what's his name?
William Hirons.
Hirons. Freaking haunt their ass. Hi.
Not much longer.
What's up, Buttercup? Getting hungry?
Oui.
Huh? Oh.
So yeah, that's the lipstick killer case. If I remember correctly, I warned you guys that this was going to be a frustrating case because the police, um, not the only one. We got a couple more.
Yeah.
We got the career girl murders, which is also another really frustrating case when it comes to the police. It's very similar to this.
It's supposed to be the glamour.
Not the next one. The next one is the
okay.
Glamour Girl Slayer. Because the Glamour Girl Slayer, we'll talk about it. It's LA in the 50s.
I want to see how I could fix the. I wish I could fix it to where you can make it black and white.
Also, I really like this layout of you just laying on the couch.
I'm comfortable right now. I don't ever get this comfortable. I'm just comfortable right now. I'm just like I even told her, so I ain't writing crap. Like, I'm just gonna sit here, and I've been giving you my attention the whole time, even though I about fell asleep a couple times.
I know in
I
the
think because
beginning.
it's like I'm relaxed,
Yeah.
and then I'm all like, when I get relaxed, I get tired.
I will say this was an interesting case. If you can tell why I hated writing this case, this is one of the reasons I hate oldie cases.
Yeah. I mean, and not wrong. You ain't wrong because, and I'm agreeing with you. I feel sorry for William.
Yeah, William
I feel
Hirons.
sorry for William. They wrongfully accused, tortured, did everything they could to get that 17-year-old.
They gave him a spinal tap with no anesthesia. That is one of the most painful procedures you can receive.
Oh, I kind of know about that. Get an epidural. But still, you wrongfully accuse, making sure our mics are still on. They didn't go off. Wrongfully accusing somebody and then torturing them because you don't want to do your job.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it. You
and I
don't
get
want
it.
to look into it.
Some cases are difficult to solve. But if you had been looking, you could have realized that the death of Suzanne was not linked with the two women's murders. Because who the fuck is going to think that those two cases are connected? Only the press would think it's connected. Because the press are not police.
Not only that, I think it was probably somebody in the press.
You know what? It could have been.
Think about it. Now, these days, to the present, to here and about,
You know, I would love to be
they don't allow
press in
there. They have that caution tape.
Mm-hmm.
They're not allowed to go in there. Period.
And it would be more like they force themselves in because you'll find like even like in later 40s they're not allowed in. You'll find there are cases where like the press was like, oh, you're not allowed in here. Like I think even the Gin case had it happened in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And that case, they straight up were like, no press allowed within a 5-mile vicinity of this house.
Oh, wow.
So, like, it all depends on the area, too, if they want to follow good police work.
And that's hard to find.
Back in the 40s, yeah.
Apparently these days. Yeah. But
so
I feel sorry for William
Hirons.
I'm putting it out there. Haunt their ass because they screwed you over.
And
dude.
Also Thomas Richard, I hope you rot in prison.
Yep, because
fuck you.
That's messed up. I will have to say this is the case where I feel bad for the young man.
Yeah, the person that they charged for the murder. I don't think he did it.
And I mean, shame. And I hate to say this about the parents. Shame on you. No matter what your son did,
the fact he could have
to be there for that. You should have been there for your son.
They should have
to get him through that.
They should have been there for not only for him, but also because technically, legally, they needed to be there for that case.
Yeah, because he was underage, under the age of 18. A parent is supposed to be there, no matter what.
Yep. So we will let you all go. And we are going to go ahead and next case, the Glamour Girl Slayer.
Oh.
Don't be a pinup girl in the 1950s. That's going to be my warning.
But do you know that those posters are pretty?
They are pretty.
I like and I'm not saying I like pinup girls. Throw that out there. Just when you look at the posters,
the photos are
the
pretty.
photos are really pretty.
All I'm saying is don't be a pinup girl in the 50s in the LA. And also, do not look up the glamour girl slayer photos. There are photos on the internet. They're not graphic.
Excuse me.
But they are disturbing because you see a lot of women in their last moments.
Ooh, okay.
So, yeah. Bye, guys. See you next week.
Sorry.
For us, it'll be probably tomorrow, but you will see us next week.
Yeah, you will see us next week. Yes, yes, yes. Bye, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Lick a muffin. Jesus. I'm tired.